Vince McMahon unlocked his Twitter account and decided to dust it off and tweet from his account. His first tweet since 2023. Do you think he's been logged in on his personal device all this time, or do you think he had to figure out his password?
I'm guessing he might have had to figure out the password, or
was
whoever
he the one tweeting out prior. I mean, this is he has not tweeted since his resignation. Was he even in control of this account
I'm very curious. What was his last tweet? Okay, and I guess it was it was this the merger from April 3rd of 2023. Just a photographic with the Vince McMahon quote talking about just some bullshit about how excited he is, and then the one prior to that, July 22nd, 2022, at 77. It's time for me to retire. Thank you, WWE Universe. And then before that, it was May 19th, talking about Andre the Giant on his 76th birthday. What would have been? So yeah, not much of a tweeter. You know, maybe really turned off by the new algorithm. Maybe he doesn't like the For You tab. Maybe that's why he quit.
Well, this is his statement done in this interesting text choice. We have.
And what is this? Times New Roman?
It does look like, Times New Roman, bold, okay. Maybe a size 12. Yeah, he says, I don't regret participating in this Netflix documentary. The producers had an opportunity to tell an objective story about my life and the incredible business I built, which were equally filled with excitement, drama, fun, and a fair amount of controversy and life lessons. Unfortunately, based on an early, partial cut I've seen, this doc falls short and takes the predictable path of conflating the Mr. McMahon character with my true self, Vince. The title and promos alone make that evident. A lot has been misrepresented or left out entirely in an effort to leave viewers intentionally confused. The producers use typical editing tricks with out of context footage and dated sound bites, etc., to distort the viewer's perception and support a deceptive narrative. In an attempt to further their misleading account, the producers use a lawsuit based on an affair I used as evidence that I am, in fact, Mr. McMahon. I hope the viewer will keep an open mind and remember that there are two sides to every story.
An affair I ended is what he wrote.
An affair that he ended.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, this is notable because it's, I guess, some official maybe dialogue we've had from Vince McMahon, not just about the documentary, but about the lawsuit. I guess our first in some time. I mean, not from a lawyer, I guess. Although this is obviously very carefully, planned and delivered. So yeah, a lot of interesting thoughts, with something like this. He is choosing to distance himself. This is now officially unapproved Vince McMahon documentary, unauthorized Vince McMahon documentary.
Which, right? In the absence of, it is amazing that, yes, I think there's a fair amount of circulation and knowledge that this documentary series is dropping, but I mean, correct me if you have seen any of the producers do any interviews in the lead up to this. I've seen nothing, and this is dropping on Wednesday. And
we've heard from sorry, what's the lead gentleman's name who's producing this?
Chris Smith.
No, the other guy.
Bill Simmons?
Bill Simmons, yeah. I mean, we've heard him mention it, but I don't think I've heard
He's mentioned it on his podcast, but I haven't seen him do any media for it. And maybe they just feel like this is going to speak for itself. But quite frankly, in the absence of that, as I was stating, this is as much of a push that Netflix could ask for.
This is the greatest thing Netflix could ask for.
The complaint that you're seeing is Netflix going to take it easy on Vince McMahon because of their relationship with WWE. And this makes it very clear. This is now the documentary series Vince McMahon does not want you to see. And that's only going to spur, if he's seen this, then it's got to be pretty damning, is the conclusion you would take. This statement here is only going to enhance people's curiosity to see what what inspired Vince McMahon to put out a statement and log on to Twitter in 2024 to address?
It's the parental advisory explicit content sticker on a rap album that is the ultimate sign of, hey, like to a kid, hey, I gotta listen to this. Yeah, I mean, you and I were already interested in this plenty enough to begin with, but yeah, with a lot of suspicion about like whether or not they were going to take it easy on Vince, we could still make that assessment coming off of it. This documentary could still not be hard enough, but obviously to Vince McMahon's taste, especially in regards to the Janelle Grant lawsuit and the way they handle it, he feels it's inaccurate.
Brandon Thurston and I are doing a show Thursday at 1 Eastern, a special Thursday edition of the show today. We're mainly going to be focusing on the first and sixth episodes, which are going to be, especially the episode 6, covering the Janelle Grant aspect of the story. And then Wei and I are going to do 6 individual reviews, dedicating one show per episode beginning Friday. So it'll be a free release on Friday covering episode 1. And then you're going to have to jump on board the Post Wrestling Cafe, because from Saturday through Wednesday, we are going to have daily releases covering episodes 2 through 6. So all members, postwrestlingcafe.com, you will have Wei and I covering all 6 episodes this week. It's a very big week on the cafe. Not just the Mr. McMahon series. We'll have Destruction in Kobe. We're going to have all of our regulars, MCU later, a power-packed week on the cafe. Do you think he really does not regret participating in this Netflix documentary? Because that's his first line. I don't regret participating in this Netflix documentary. But there was a clear time that you stopped participating in this documentary. So I think like that is going to be a criticism of those that are reading this, is that, listen, if you feel you are not going to come off well here, you didn't give your chance to defend yourself in this documentary. You pulled out prior to your resignation and did not speak with them afterward, where I am certain they would have very much accommodated you had you been able to sit down with them and give your side of the story. It's kind of hard to cry foul that you're not being properly represented when you removed yourself from the process.
Sure. Hard to say like what would be going through his mind in a decision like that. I'm it could just be, hey, like the more attention I choose to put on this, the more I speak on it, it's still going to reflect poorly on me. Just as I think a statement like this we're reading right now ultimately reflects poorly on Vince, sheds only more light onto these accusations. And as long as you're doing that, I just don't think that he'll ever come out looking good. It could just be not wanting to be a part of it at all. Whether or not he truly regrets participating in the documentary, it's really hard to say. I mean, I don't think he'll come out and say, I regret participating in the documentary. He's only seen a partial cut, okay? So maybe he's going to love the rest of this.
Do you think he violated an embargo?
Maybe he got a screener somehow. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah. This is, I'm guessing, going to ramp up the buzz for this documentary that much more. Especially on a Monday night. Do you believe his request for the viewer to keep an open mind and remember that there are 2 sides to every story? Do you feel like, let's say this is released on Tuesday, by Wednesday afternoon, this will be the case with most people?
I think you're going to have the full gamut of responses. Do not be stunned at all that you're going to have plenty of people that are going to go into this with the belief that, like the response that we've seen from a lot of wrestlers is that, yes, he did these awful things, but Vince McMahon also created this wonderful world and Netflix is trying to diminish his legacy. You will have that response from people that that are going to look at this as an unfair hit piece on Vince McMahon. You're also going to have people that, listen, this is a documentary on the life of Vince McMahon, and there are many deserving attributes that should be assigned to Vince McMahon's legacy. Does all of these allegations override that? I think for many, the answer is yes. But that's ultimately what this is going to come down to. I think episode 6 is going to be the episode that is going to be the most heavily focused upon, and how how deep they go, how thorough they are, who are the voices that they lean on in the absence of Vince McMahon and Janelle Grant, who we know will not be speaking about the lawsuit or anything that happened since the resignation. I'd also add, I'm very disappointed when I heard Jim Ross on his podcast state that there was no outreach to Jim Ross. Like, if I was making a Vince McMahon documentary and I was making a list of people that I would want to have on there, Jim Ross is not at the top of the list, but he's definitely in the top 10, maybe even higher. He, in terms of somebody that you know you're going to get credible information from, that has seen the good and the bad, all things in between with Vince McMahon, and is not tied to the WWE in the sense that he's going to be playing defense for Vince McMahon. And was his right-hand man for so many years. And the fact that he was not even reached out to, again, I'm reserving judgment till I see these 6 episodes, but that to me is a mark against this, that someone like Jim Ross was not contacted.
So do we know if there are any active AEW employees that are a part of this documentary?
I mean, I think that it's, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, there probably are not. But that was not going to stop Jim Ross from being in this either.
No, but would it have stopped the filmmakers from reaching out? Because
that should not be a concern of theirs if they have final cut and WWE does not.
So what was the intent of this documentary at its genesis, though, John?
To tell the Vince McMahon story. That should be the purpose of this.
With or without the authorization of Vince McMahon, though, when it began? When they came up with the list of people that they wanted to speak to, was this supposed to be a glowing documentary about Vince McMahon at the beginning, or was it always meant to be this sort of, I guess, what Vince is terming as a bit of a hit piece?
When this began in 2021, this was not designed to just be like some. They were going to address the controversies, which were, in hindsight, I guess, not as thorough as the ones we have now, not as recent as these ones. But this was not going to just be some fluff piece from the start. This was like for Netflix, like this was going to be, digging into a lot of Vince McMahon's past as well.
Sure. But was there some directive within them to not want to speak to people that might not have been employed by the WWE or might have been at the time employed by a rival company? We can speculate maybe that as part
listen, of the reason. I'm sure that's the reason. I don't think it's a justifiable one. If you're trying to tell the story here, like what, to me, that holds no water. If you're in one hand stating that Netflix has the final cut and WWE and Vince McMahon did not have the final say on this, and you're making your choices based on promotional affiliation at the expense of the story. Like, I feel Jim Ross would have been someone that in any one of these episodes, he would be all over this documentary. He was involved in how many people that are going to speak that openly, that have ties to the territory system, to the Attitude Era boom, right up to the present. Like, this was somebody that, I mean, I'm just looking at, and like, I'd far rather hear him than a lot of the talking heads that we're going to see if you want that kind of thoroughness. That works so closely with Vince McMahon.
We'll find out when we watch the documentary, like how close they get to the truth, and whether or not its true intent was to give like sort of their version, like Vince's version, the WWE version of the story, or if there's a real aim and effort from the documentary producers to actually try to give you a truthful representation. So going back to the statement, I do find it interesting. It does kind of tip the hand of, I guess, the ending of the documentary in, like, the trailer asks the question, is this Vince McMahon the person, or is it Vince McMahon the character? And Vince is basically saying that the conclusion of the documentary says that Vince McMahon and Mr. McMahon are one and the same, to which Vince McMahon disagrees. This also seems to be like, in a way, his defense. He is standing by maybe a lot of what he's accused for being the character of Mr. McMahon instead of who he genuinely is. And like, it's the Terry Bollea defense, right? And immediately I think that reads really poorly. Again, we'll have to see the documentary. It's true that we have not heard Vince's side yet on all of this, but if it's anything along the lines of, that's the Mr. McMahon character, I'm Vince McMahon, I don't think it'll play very well to the public.
do you expect Vince McMahon to speak further after the series comes out in any capacity?
Maybe if pressed, with maybe depending on how big all of this gets coming out of it. I'm assuming we're not going to get much statement beyond what the point of this statement was. So I'm
to
assuming
put more attention on the documentary series is what the unintended effect of this will have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So shortly after this statement was released on Monday evening, Ann Callis, the lawyer for Janelle Grant, issued her own statement, and we will read that as well. This was sent out. Vince McMahon physically and emotionally abused, sexually assaulted, and human trafficked Janelle Grant for more than 2 years. Calling his horrific and criminal behavior an affair is delusional and nothing more than a sad attempt to save his shredded reputation. Although Ms. Grant has not seen the Mr. McMahon docuseries, we hope it shines a bright light on his abhorrent and criminal actions by accurately portraying the realities of his abusive and exploitative behavior. Ms. Grant will no longer be silenced by McMahon. Her story, though deeply troubling and exceptionally painful, is one that can help other abuse survivors find their voices. We seek to hold McMahon, John Laurinaitis, and WWE accountable and to give Ms. Grant her day in court.
Pretty standard response you would expect from Ann Callis, and maybe just, again, like with the press conference last week, using this opportunity to get their side of the story out there, or at least their intent of publicizing, the lawsuit and what they want people to focus on as it relates to the Janelle Grant lawsuit.
And I have no doubt from the press conference last week and doubling down in this statement, Janelle Grant is going to speak at some point. I have no doubt about that. I think they're making it very clear that on her timetable, Janelle Grant will speak about this. And I think the fact that it was said over and over in the press conference, she will, I think it was literal and figurative about her having her day in court, but getting her story out there on her time and being one that can help other abuse survivors. I think you will hear from Janelle Grant at some point.
So the lawsuit is on hold right now, but that doesn't prevent them from speaking to the public about it.
Right? They are not. There's no. They are on a stay right now. So, there are limitations in terms of what you can do in terms of building your case, but they are not under a gag order. Janelle Grant could have taken part in this Netflix series if she had chosen to. Vince McMahon obviously did, right. And they're free to speak. It might be advised by their counsel not to speak, but there's nothing preventing them from talking about this.
Okay. Well, yep. The topic will be front and center, and we'll see what sort of editing tricks might be employed. How hilarious. Vince McMahon, the person who's made a career out of embellishing and exaggerating the truth in every little statement. The attendance figures, certainly, somebody brought up here the Ultimate Warrior DVD, complaining this man.
Screwed, the Bret Hart story.
Yeah. These producers use typical editing tricks with out-of-context footage.
I know all these tricks.
Yes, right. Okay. Well, we'll see.
It's going to be a very much discussed series that's coming out this Wednesday.
If you like this video, consider joining our Patreon, the Post Wrestling Cafe. Multiple bonus podcasts every week, ad-free shows, and access to our full archive. Otherwise, a like and subscribe is much appreciated. Thank you for watching.